on TV at Virgin Media Channel 927.
You're listening to Football First here on talkSPORT. Me, Nat Coombs, alongside Alvin Martin. Let's look ahead to England's game against Germany on Tuesday at Wembley. Should be an absolutely cracking occasion. German football writer Mark Lovell joins us now to talk it up. Hi, Mark.
Good evening, how are you?
Very good indeed. Good to have you with us on the show. We're licking our lips in anticipation of this, not least because everybody anticipates Roy Hodgson to put out his strongest 11, which of course will represent a markedly different 11 that played against Chile last night.
We have to hope so for England's sake. We all remember the 4-1 defeat in Bloemfontein. We remember Frankie Lampard's goal that wasn't given, that could have brought it back to 2-2 by half-time. How things might have been different after half-time, you don't know. But England needs to put out a full-strength side. You'd have to think after what we saw against Chile. And the Germans coming off a reasonable draw in Milan against Italy, a 1-1 draw. But shock news or bad news for Jogi Löw is losing Sami Khedira, midfield general, for 6 months, and he's in a race to be fit for the World Cup, and that's a blow for Germany.
That's a big ask, that, you know. So that's probably as bad an injury as you can get now in football, the cruciate injury. But good luck to him. Looking at Germany's record in friendlies, it's not great, is it? They don't. If it's a qualifier or a major tournament, they get the results done. But they've drawn a lot of games, and they don't probably take them as serious, perhaps, as we do. But they do it in the big tournaments, Mark. I don't know how they switch that on and switch that off. How do they do that?
It's a mentality thing, Alvin. You know, you mentioned their record in qualifying, 9 wins out of 10, and that included, another draw, a 4-4 draw when they let slip a 4-0 lead against Sweden. You mentioned their record in friendlies. I think a key factor in organising these friendlies against strong opponents in Italy and England is that Germany have a negative record against the Azzurri and England over the years. Germany has struggled to beat Italy. They've only got 7 wins in 32 games against Italy and 11 wins against England in 32 games. So I think it was a factor that Germany get the strongest opponents possible at this stage in preparation for the World Cup.
We've seen, Mark, the Germany teams in the past, both internationally and domestically, with teams like Bayern, in crucial situations often choke. They often let the pressure get to them. It feels as though here we have a team that's clearly one of the best in the world, ranked number 2 in the world, full of superstars, yet there is an undercurrent of pressure on Joachim Löw. A lot of people criticising his defensive tactics and the defensive elements of this Germany team, more and more with the implication that if Germany don't go to Brazil next summer and win the World Cup, his tenure will be a failure. He's got such a wonderful array of talent, he has to go and win. What's your perspective on that?
I was looking at that earlier, and an interesting point. Yeah, it was his 100th game in charge of Germany last night in Milan. He's, according to the stats, the most successful record in German football in history. If you're taking the 3-point rule, 2.22 per game. However, you mentioned that he hasn't won a title yet, and that's what he'll be judged on. And he's heavily criticised for that 2012 Euro 2012 defeat in Warsaw against Italy. 2 Balotelli goals on the night where he made a couple of changes. One introducing Toni Kroos into the game, and Pirlo ran the show there in Poland, and he was heavily criticised. And he got a lot of backing from the German Football Association after that, and he stayed in the job, and he's, everything's going his way at the moment, but he's got a few injuries there, and it won't be a full-strength side tomorrow in this friendly on Tuesday at Wembley. But it's going to be a really interesting game, as you mentioned.
What about the nation in general? What is their perception of this German team, the strongest lineup they can possibly have? Just mentioned there, Khedira might not make the trip to Brazil, but do they feel that this is as good a team as they've ever had?
Not absolutely. Until they win things, Alvin, that's what they're judged on the trophies. They have some great players, star players at Bayern Munich and Borussia Dortmund. You'd have to feel they're missing a top quality striker. Klose is getting on a bit. He's suffering with injuries. Mario Gomez, they are missing a striker, and their defence, which you mentioned earlier, has let in a lot of goals in qualifying. They've won 9 out of 10, but their defence has been criticised. Nat mentioned Löw taking criticism for his setting up of the defence. They have arguably the best goalkeeper in the world in Manuel Neuer, but until they win the silverware, chaps, they're going to be criticised.
How does the German media react to friendlies and what they feel that Love should do in a situation like this? Because we've seen Roy Hodgson experimenting against Chile. We've talked about it a lot tonight, blooding new players, giving them a run out so he can work something out about whether they're going to be in the mix for his final 23. Is that the same with Germany? There are certain players on the fringes of the squad that, how many places do you think are locked down and how many places are up for grabs?
Well, Love's already come out in the press and said he will be experimenting in these two friendlies, which the press have accepted. Also have to bear in mind that the biggest game in the Bundesliga is looming next Saturday evening. You have Dortmund at home against the treble winners Bayern Munich. Bayern are 4 points clear, and Love's already sort of hinted that he's going to rest the goalkeeper Manuel Neuer and Philipp Lahm is skipper. So in fairness, you're looking at which Borussia Dortmund players is he going to rest to, sort of for the fairness of the Bundesliga. Obviously, there's players on the fringes who will fancy a game. Grosskreutz, one of the Benders, Toni Kroos. These are players not always regular starters for Bayern or Dortmund, but they will fancy the chance at Wembley on Tuesday.
What about the relationship, Mark? We've got an uneasy relationship between RFA and the Premier League. What's the situation in Germany regarding the Bundesliga and the German FA?
I think it's a lot stronger, a lot tighter links, Alvin. I think there's a real focus on Germany finally winning some silverware, winning a trophy. They came very close in recent years. Obviously, we just mentioned his 2012 defeat against Italy. That sits very deeply. A lot of hurt there. It's going to be, let's be realistic, to win a World Cup in a different continent. Very difficult in Brazil next year. But this is a quality German side, and they have every chance if they can get all their fit players back. Khedira, Schweinsteiger's out until the new year. Gundogan, another top-class midfielder for Dortmund. So these are players that need to be fit and firing for Brazil.
Let me ask you about Stefan Kiesling, Mark, the Leverkusen striker, who is a terrific player, year in, year out, delivers at the top level, and there's continual clamouring around him to be called up to the squad. He never gets the nod. I don't think there's really an example over here of a similar situation I can think of in recent years anyway. What's going on there? Because to put it in context for our listeners that maybe aren't that familiar with the Bundesliga, he's banging in the goals for one of the top clubs. It's the equivalent of playing for a Spurs or a similar sized team. And he's scoring at the top level. He's not getting the nod. Why is that?
Absolutely no idea now, to be honest with you. It's clear that somehow his face does not fit in the Jogi Löw's setup, whether it's his style of play, but he's a proven Bundesliga scorer at Bayer Leverkusen and top scorer in the Bundesliga last season. He's obviously doing a lot of things right. He's a regular scorer in the Champions League, but it's a strange one. I have no clear information as why he doesn't get picked.
What about
especially now when you've got Klose injured and Mario Gomez injured.
He just scored the odd goal that isn't a goal as well, didn't he? I don't know what happened with that a few weeks back, Keelan.
Yeah.
What about the makeup of the team? Every team, I think Germany are always the epitome of a team, but they have great individuals in there. Ozil, obviously, is somebody that will be influential. Who do you think, Mark, is the player that they need the most as an individual in the team ethic?
But going forward, every team needs a solid base, and then they've got arguably the best goalkeeper in world football, in Manuel Neuer. Hardly makes a mistake, and they have Philipp Lahm, who can play anywhere. Guardiola's been so amazed with the quality of the Bayern skipper and the German skipper, and those are two absolute rocks for Bayern Munich and for Germany. Without Philipp Lahm and Manuel Neuer, this would be a little bit flimsy.
And Mark, just moving in terms of the Premier League's interest in Bundesliga stars, we've seen now with Schürrle coming over, then Özil, perhaps the most high-profile. Mertesacker's starting to really deliver there, and now we're seeing clubs perpetually linked with more and more players coming over. Kagawa hasn't really worked out, of course, Man United so far, but was a huge star at Dortmund. Do you anticipate that to continue, or do you think that the Bundesliga clubs will, as much as they can, be resistant to that? Because in reports over recent days, we're hearing players like Marco Reus being linked with a move over here. Do you think that's likely to happen?
It can always happen now when the money's right. We had Andre Schürrle go from Leverkusen to Chelsea. I think it depends if they're drifting towards the end of their contract and if the club, sees, whether they can get 10, 15 million for this player and prefer to take the money and let them leave for free at the end of their contract.
What about Lewandowski? Because, of course, he is an agreement to move to Bayern Munich. But, again, there's rumours that maybe Dortmund will cash in January and get something for him as opposed to allowing him to go on a free to their bitter rivals.
I was at the Dortmund game and where he scored all those goals against Real Madrid, and I saw Jose Mourinho talking to him and praising him, shaking his hands. It's possible, but we've been told for months that his move to Bayern Munich is a done deal. It would be a real shock if that was to turn around and he would end up going to the Premiership, but nothing would surprise you in football these days.
All right, terrific stuff. Mark, many thanks indeed. Enjoy the game on Tuesday, England versus Germany. Really looking forward to that one. What's your prediction for Tuesday night, Alvin?
I think England will play a lot better than they did against Chile. I think they'll